Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Blue Raider Podcast, hosted by Jake Bolden and presented by the Conseco Group General Contracting and Mighty Dog Roofing. Don't miss another Tuesday episode by subscribing to the podcast on all streaming platforms or catch our visual presentation uploaded every week on YouTube. Don't miss our next ticket giveaways by subscribing and following on all Blue Raider Podcast social media accounts on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Blue Raider Pod. Welcome back into the Blue Raider Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Bolden, and today we've got so much Blue Raider action for you. I've got Brett Walker, sports editor for the MTSU Sidelines, and we're going to be talking about the MTSU football matchup this past weekend against Duke, as well as highlighting a little bit of women's basketball and their recruiting news that hit the Conference USA by storm, and really NCAA as a whole this last week. And then we will have some interviews, player interviews with our cross-country stars Jacinto Gaspar and Eleanor Towe, both talking about their midseason as we get closer to their Conference USA Championship in November. And then lastly, as always, we will go behind enemy lines and talk with Frank Bonner II, as he is a beat writer for the Memphis Tigers at the Daily Memphian. So again, action-packed episode for you this week. I'm extremely excited to bring all that to you. But first, before we get going, as always, I'd like to thank our sponsors, beginning with the Conseco Group General Contracting. Since 1987, the Conseco Group has been turning dreams into reality, whether it's pre-construction consulting, construction management, design, build, or renovations and improvements. We're here to succeed your expectations. At Conseco Group, they don't just deliver, they deliver with passion, precision, and unparalleled quality. Their hands-on approach ensures your investment is maximized and your vision is brought to life. From Clarksville all the way down south to Columbia and beyond, trust the Conseco Group to handle every detail with expertise and care. So if you're ready to build your future, go ahead and contact the Conseco Group today at 615-298-9907 or visit their website at consecogroup.com. Again, I appreciate the Conseco Group for sponsoring the Blue Raider Podcast, as well as Mighty Dog Roofing. Mighty Dog Roofing, when it comes to your home, trust Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East for all your needs. As a veteran and locally owned business, they are honored with one of the 11 Owens Corning contractor nationwide to win their prestigious service award. So they are number one across the nation in their customer service. From roofing to gutters to windows to siding, their expert team will deliver top quality craftsmanship and unmatched service. If we are here to protect your home with pride and precision. So choose Mighty Dog Roofing for all your roofing needs. Nashville East, where excellence is a tradition. Call them today at 615-MD-ROOFS. That's MDROOFS. Or visit their website at Mighty Dog Roofing. Thanks again to Mighty Dog Roofing, as well as the Conseco Group, for sponsoring the Blue Raider Podcast. Now, it is time to get into our past weekend, and I'm excited to introduce our first guest of the day. He is the MTSU Sidelines sports editor. It is Brett Walker. Brett, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great, Jake. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Absolutely, and so much to talk about. And as always with these episodes, we'll go ahead and break down Mason's post-game presser, and we'll just hear from his opening statement from the loss this past weekend.
Tonight, but a good game play by Duke. And I thought they were physical. They ran to the ball. They were able to cause a total of 5 turnovers on the day, and that's a lot of turnovers. When you look at it, 5 or actually 3 fumbles, 1 interception. I thought they were the aggressor. I thought they did a good job again of slowing down or actually speeding up our quarterback like tonight. I thought we ran the ball well. It was good to see the momentum of us coming out scoring, okay, man. But we found ourselves giving it right back with a busted coverage, on our second play of the game defensively. We have to keep fighting through the errors. There's going to be some errors, but for us, man, we have to minimize these things. And as I look at the penalties, 6 for 55, guys are playing hard, but we just need to play smarter. But there was some progress tonight, and what I told our guys in the locker room was we have to make sure for us that we grab to get better. I looked at this team play, and you take the turnovers out of it, and I think it's a different ball game, in terms of how you're competing and what it feels like. But you don't, okay? Like you don't get a chance to. So what we have to do is eliminate the mistakes, eliminate the errors, and keep pushing forward because the breakthrough is going to come. I believe that, and I want these guys to continue to believe that. They do. I saw that in their eyes in the locker room. Are they a little frustrated? Absolutely. But, you sort of keep what you kill in this. You sort of get what you earn, okay? And we haven't done enough to earn enough right now to make these things sort of go away. So we're just going to continue to play, continue to keep pushing the envelope, and what we'll do, again, is see if we can protect our quarterback along with running the football. Let's see if we can make sure that we defend a blade of grass, because if you can do that and hold some teams to some field goals, games get tighter.
All right, Brett. Well, there was Coach Mason. A lot was said there. There's, for me, the one thing that I can kind of sum up this last weekend's game, and we had the same sensation on last Saturday when they lost to Western Kentucky, is the early turnovers take you out of the opportunity to compete late in the game. And last week it wasn't the turnovers. Well, one of them was a turnover, but it was the inability to execute in the red zone. This week it's the turnovers. My biggest contention with this team is it doesn't seem like it's necessarily the same problem every week. Now, we have our same problems every week, but we just keep making stupid mistakes, whether it's execution, and sometimes it may even be personnel that's putting us in those situations. But we take ourselves out in the first quarter, and the competitiveness of the game has evaporated before we even get to halftime.
Absolutely, Jake. I mean, it's like you talk about, self-inflicted wounds will drive a head coach crazy. And that is just what they've been doing. It seems like every week, week in, week out, unfortunately. You go back to Western Kentucky because Tennessee Tech, they obviously won. Ole Miss was Ole Miss. But then Western Kentucky was the first game where you really kind of thought you might be able to finally see what this team is all about. And they took themselves out of it. I mean, you have 2 red zone possessions inside the 10-yard line, and in one case inside the 6-inch yard line, and you're not able to even get a field goal out of either of those possessions because you had the first red zone possession where you're down the 6-inch line, 4 straight plays, 3 of them run plays. One of them was a fumble, obviously, and they had to fall on top of it. And that just takes you out when you can't. And it's like bursting a bubble whenever you can't get in from the 6-inch line. That's what, after that game, that's what the quarterback Nick Battiato talked about. He says, it's deflating whenever, if you can't get 6 inches, you feel like you shouldn't even be out there. So it's deflating for the team. But then they rebounded against Western, and they got the ball back in that exact same position later on, and then they were unable to score again. So I think it can't be understated how deflating that is. And then they finally they didn't have that problem. I think they were, if I'm correct, 2 for 2 in the red zone against Duke on Saturday. But you have the opposite problem. You're in the opposite red zone trying to get out of the deep part of minus territory, and you can't because you keep fumbling inside the 25. So it's unfortunate to see that, because I liked a lot of what they did on Saturday in the run game, but they just took themselves out of it early with those self-inflicted wounds once again. And so I hated to see that.
Yeah, when I was prepping for this, as I told you, we sat together there in the press conference room, and emotions for me as a big MTSU fan to run a little high, because I want this team to be competitive week in and week out, and they just haven't quite been there these first 2 weeks. And again, anticipating we'd be 1-3 in this situation, I thought how we'd be 1-3 was just a little bit different. Like, the Tennessee Tech game, I hate going back 4 weeks, but you like to think you'd be a little bit more competitive in that game. Ole Miss is Ole Miss. I actually don't think we fared too awfully bad at Ole Miss. I thought the offense did some good things. We got put in situations where you have to go for it in 4th down late in the game just to make the score seem a little bit more respectable. So if there was any game I actually feel better about, it might even be the Ole Miss game. But the second half that you have with Duke, actually, you come out from that rain delay and you play really well. You score on that first drive. Unfortunately, you relinquish a scoring drive for Duke as well. But again, back to the competitiveness, it's not there. And maybe in those situations where you come out of those delays, you play well, because the other teams they're not all there. So it's even that's hard to gauge if that's actually truly MTSU doing well, or you're just you're a victim of your circumstances because of all these delays, whatever it may be. But I want to talk a little bit now. I wrote down the notes. I have it as the good, the bad, and the ugly. And some of the good, if we have to take away from this week, and there is some good, we ran the ball for 168 yards. You may, again, the naysayers will say, well, most of it came on 2 plays, which you have a point, but you still ran the ball with some level of effectiveness against a relatively good Duke front. And then on the other side of the ball, defensively, you hold Duke to 340 yards of offense. And again, a naysayer, rightfully so, will say, well, because they started majority of their scoring drives inside the red zone. They didn't have to go very far, which, again, those are viable options. And then my last third good point is your third down defense was good. You're one of the worst teams going into Saturday. You're the worst team in the country in third down defense. You come out, you're 133rd now because you went 3 for 10 against Duke. So you held them to 7 times they either had to kick a field goal or they had to punt the football, which is, again, that's good. That's moving in the right direction in those parts. So with those 3 things in mind, again, I feel good that we had something positive to talk about on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. The main thing was offensively for me was the run game, because I don't know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I've ever in my life seen a team that pass blocks better than they run block consistently. That's typically it's easier to run block. Any offensive lineman will tell you that. But on Saturday, it seemed to me from the press box that they finally started to get some things together. I mean, they had the big run from Cradle to start the game, and even although you don't want to highlight this, but even on the plays that they fumbled, they weren't, getting stuffed in the backfield and fumbling. They always were getting positive gains. I mean, they had Terry had kind of a rough game on Saturday, but even he was getting some good yardage on those plays. So I really like what they did in the run game, because for that passing offense to have any sort of success down the road, they're going to have to set it up with a run. I mean, you can't line up and have the defense already keyed in on what you're going to be able to do. If you can't run the ball, that makes you Nick Battiato, the entire rest of the offense, it makes their job so much harder if you can't run it. And then you talked about the defense. I thought the defense, given the situations, the very bad situations they were put in on Saturday, I thought they played probably one of their best games of the season, other than the first half against Tennessee Tech. That was probably their best performance of the season, objectively, because they, I didn't feel like they missed I feel like they tackled better, which is something I couldn't say against Western Kentucky. I didn't feel like the open field missed tackles were as bad. And also, I mean, with your backs against the wall, there's not a whole lot, you can do. When the sudden change, coaches will talk about it all the time, sudden change for your defense, it makes it so hard just to do anything in that aspect. And you said obviously that was the lowest yards they've allowed this year in the passing game. So I think it speaks to your development as the season goes along that you allowed less passing yards to Power 4 Duke than you did against Tennessee Tech with a backup quarterback. Like you said, naysayers out there will say, well, they didn't have to go very far. But, I mean, you play in the situations that the game puts you in, and I feel like in those situations, for what they had to deal with, they played significantly better than I've seen them play thus far this season.
Yeah, I agree. And going into it, the storyline, at least I thought, was how is MTSU going to be able to contain Jordan Moore and Eli Pancol? And I don't have the stats in front of me, but they were a non-factor. Unfortunately, it was a tight end that had the big game for Duke. But again, it would appear that the film study is there. The guys are making the necessary adjustments to be competitive in that regard.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like you talked about. You look at the Duke receiving room, and when one of them is averaging 100 yards a game, and he was limited to, I have the stats on me. See if I can find it on here. I mean, yeah, he's just a non-factor here on the stat sheet. So that's good. That's positive. Unfortunately, like you said, they got gashed by that tight end, but it shows that, the knowledge is there. They know what they're supposed to be. There's a game plan in place. It's just, I feel like they those poor situations that they were put in, they just never really had an opportunity to recover, because I feel like in the second half, whenever the offense stopped turning the ball over, they actually fared pretty well.
I agree. And we'll move now from we're talking to good. Let's get back into the bad. And there's a lot to really discuss there, but there was a few key takeaways from this last week that I thought were vital for us to kind of talk about. Was we talk about the offense, the passing yards, only 127 is the fewest that they've had this entire season. If you take away the sacks, the offense is still at a 50-50 play calling. You got 35 passing plays, you got 34 rushing plays. So by just the way the game moves, you should be throwing, your yardage should be higher in the passing game than it should be in the running game. But I think a lot of that comes from the offensive line that continues to shuffle around. We're still dealing with injuries, as you already touched on. The pass protection, it just limits the ability to throw downfield because of all this shuffling. And again, maybe, I don't know if it's the fact that some of these guys are having to figure out where they're playing. Mateo, we saw him roll over at center a little bit. He also moved at guard. And then you also have Simon Wilson, who's doing the same thing. Ellis Adams, you got Ethan Ellis. Both of them have been rotating through because of the lack of play that they've had or early on in the season. So a lot of guys are still feeling themselves through. And then we saw Marcus Miller on the sideline this last weekend on crutches. So it's going to continue to shuffle. It's not going to get any better. But you got to find a way to get some success in the passing game. And I think a lot of that has to do with doing better in the run game. And with all this shuffling, the run game looked good. Maybe they kind of figure out how the lineup is going to fit together as we get closer to conference play to see that continue to progress. And then my last note on the bad is the quarterback pressure just isn't enough. And really, I want to throw this into the ugly category, but I could see where you make the argument that the numbers aren't there because you've played Ole Miss, you've played Western Kentucky, who has one of the better offensive lines in the conference, and then you've played Duke, who I thought Duke going in might be the worst offensive line we'll play this year. And if our run defense is any indication of that, that's probably true. But on the pass protection side, we weren't able to get to the quarterback. We weren't. We've had just 2 quarterback hits on Saturday. And if you total up the last 3 weeks against Ole Miss, Western, and Duke, we have 4 hits on the quarterback in total. That's just not going to get the job done. It's not going to allow you to be competitive when you get into conference play, because as we've seen, especially at Tech, at Ole Miss, is if they have a mobile quarterback, this team doesn't really have a chance. Like, you have to be getting to the quarterback. You can't allow him to break contain. You have to make him make quick decisions. And if we're not pressuring him enough, they don't have to make those quick decisions. He's allowed to escape the pocket with ease. He's allowed to get 5 yards downfield. It's making life harder for the DBs, who we've said all along have had issues covering. And it's hard to defend a guy for 5-6 seconds because you're not getting that pressure necessary. So and I'll go ahead and throw the ugly in. We touched on it already. The 2 games, first quarter, you're taking yourself out of it. I think if you're going into Memphis this week, you've got to think, let's just stay in it at least to halftime. I think that would be a win itself. If you're within 2 touchdowns by halftime, you're still in the ball game. And up to this point, we haven't had that yet. So I know that was a long-winded way of talking about all the bad, because there's so much more I could really break down. But Brett, and you touched on it too yourself. But tell me, I mean, when you talk about a few of those objectives, passing game's not there, the quarterback hits aren't there, the pressure's not there. Are those reasons for concern? And moving into, now we have Hennigan, but really the conference play.
Yeah, I think the lack of a pass rush is pretty concerning to me, because you walk out of the stadium and the players walk out of off the field, and I don't think I spotted a turf pellet on Malik Murphy's jersey or even any bit of blue paint from the field at all. So I don't think it's like you said, you can't compete whenever you're not even laying a hand on their quarterback. And then on the flip side, you've got Vadiato hitting the dirt consistently. I mean, he was slow to get up. And that's another thing. If you wanted to put that in the bad category, he's getting roughed up a lot. It seems like early on in this season, even come out at one time, which of course he went back in after they checked him out. But so that's something concerning too, is you're not hitting their quarterback and they're hitting yours. So that doesn't bode well for, this is, you think 12 games isn't a lot, but it is. And it wears on them. It wears on the players. You're a third of the way through the season now, but You've already got so many injuries everywhere else, whether it be offensive line specifically, and then now, you just got to keep your guys upright, and that's something that they're going to have to key in on. And you talked about the pass game a little bit, not having the success that they had in the last couple of weeks. I did like previously against Western, and then towards the end of the game against Tennessee Tech, I think Nick and Amari Kelly are starting to maybe get it figured out a little bit. But obviously that just wasn't there Saturday. And of course, Nick and Holden, they had a few nice connections, Holden Willis. But I would like to see more involvement, just depth-wise from the wide receiver room. I think Amarion Carter, Miles Butler are two guys that can really contribute. I think the talent's there, obviously. I think that's just something that's going to take a little bit of time to kind of develop. And then also you just talked about not being able to hit the quarterback. And I think that's one of those things where if you give the quarterback 6-7 seconds to throw the ball, your DBs, who, like you said, are already kind of a weak spot at this point in time, whenever you give them 5-6 seconds to throw the ball, they're not going to have a chance. So in order to give them a better chance, you got to start getting back there, at least some, maybe once or twice a game. And you don't even have to sack them. You just have to get up in their face and make them feel the heat so they're not having, that's like the week previous. Caden Veltkamp had one of the cleanest pockets I've ever seen. And he's a talented guy to where if he has a clean pocket, he's going to sit back there and rip them like Brett Favre. I mean, and that's what he did. So, especially as they get into conference play, they're playing guys like Caden Salter later on. You're not going to be able to give them that much time, or they're going to eat you up, as the other quarterbacks have early on in the season.
Yeah, I agree. And the quarterback play has been exceptional. I understand that. Jackson Dart, Heisman favorite, Caden Veltkamp, as you touched on, who really could be a starter in the league. I think he's unfortunately had to sit behind TJ Finley. Unfortunately or not, I think he's going to end up being quite the typical Austin Reed, Bailey Zappi that we see at Western Kentucky. He's going to be there for a while. So I don't look forward to seeing these other mobile quarterbacks. Like one that I think of is Keon Jenkins at FIU, a team that's not particularly good, but if you give him opportunities to make plays, it's gonna wreak some havoc for you. So I throw this question back at you as we wrap up football here. What would be considered a good effort on Memphis on Saturday?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that back up. For me, it's playoff work orders. I talked about it in the pregame show that I'm on, Blue Raider Extra Point with Middle Tennessee News on Saturday. One of my keys to success for MT on Saturday was the playoff work orders, because to this point they have not put together a complete performance in any facet. Tennessee Tech, they played a great quarter and a half, and then Ole Miss was Ole Miss, and then Western, they played a good second half, and then Duke, they had some spottiness, played good early on, played good in the third quarter, but they've just yet to put together a complete performance, and that is just disheartening, because you're sitting up there, whether you're in the stands or whether you're in the press box, you see what can be, and then you see what is. And what it is a team that just hasn't been able to put it all together yet. And I think when they can be a pretty, competent and competitive football team, but they just haven't yet. And so I'd like to, like you said, see them hang with Memphis, scare them a little bit. Memphis is coming off a very heartbreaking loss, so they're going to be ticked off, to say the least. But I think it's like Coach Mason said in his post-game presser, in his opening statement, the Blue Raiders are ticked off too. I think they know what opportunities they may have missed, and I think it's going to be a good game on Saturday. I hope that MT comes out and maybe stuns Memphis a little bit early on, and I just like to see them hang with them and just play a good, complete game and maybe scare the Tigers a little bit in the Liberty Bowl on Saturday.
Yeah, that'll be something we all have eyes on as you conclude your non-conference play. You want to, again, be competitive, have something to kind of hang your hat on as you move into conference play. You got that week and a half break, and then you go down to Ruston and play Louisiana Tech, who actually looks a lot better on paper than I had given them credit for. So a lot coming down the pipe for them. And and the season kind of hangs in the balance for them. But as I teased at the beginning, we're going to shift our attention over to a program that really, I have all the confidence in the world in, and they have continued to build that confidence in us with their signing class. It was announced this last week, 2 more signings. That's Nicole Dominguez. If you haven't already heard, she's 6'10", and that's not a typo. She's 6'10" tall. She's a center I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I think it's Tenerife, Spain is where she's from. But she's international, obviously. She's a part of the U17 Spain's FIBA World Cup team, bronze winning. Only had 6.5 points per game, 6 rebounds per game. But she's sitting behind Okeke, who is a WNBA prospect. So she's a little unfair when it comes to minutes played. She also was battling a little bit of a high ankle sprain amidst that. So she didn't play the whole World Cup. But anyone who's 6'10" has got to be competitive. And we look at the film, and if you haven't, I encourage you to check out either my Twitter account at Blue Raider Pod or go to gomiddle.com. We have all the highlights there that we kind of put together from her games there at the FIBA World Cup this last year. But the thing I love about this signing in particular is, one, you have this question mark of what's going to happen when Boulder-Rava leaves this year. She graduates. Mm-hmm. So you don't really have this dominating presence anymore, quote unquote, because after this, you lose Grantham, you lose Boulder-Rava. The only center that's truly on your roster, true center that's on your roster, is Miyoshi Mason. So you've got to have someone else in there to work with her. And this is that pickup, 6'10". You did the job. But when I watch film on her, she's very headsy. I like her IQ. One thing about big players that always aggravates me, and Brett, I'm sure if you've watched enough basketball, you would agree. You're 6'10". Dribbling the ball, that's a long way that basketball's got to go to the floor and back to your hands. And there's a lot of players shorter than you. Those hands are going to get that ball. It makes it so easy. And I love Nastia as much as the next person. But when she first got here, she kind of had that problem herself, was she felt she had to dribble and make a move. When I watch Nicole on tape, she's very smart. When she has the ball, it's a turn, it's a shot. She's already doing that step through that we see Nastia do really well. So it's like the pieces are there for her to be a great player. And then when you tee that up with the developmental abilities that the Insoles have and this coaching staff have with players that are 6'10", we're historically a great program for bigs. You fit her into our type of program. I think this girl has the ability to take the world by storm, much like Boulder-Rava has these last 2 years. Absolutely.
You put that kind of size in any you could put her in the WNBA right now, and she'd be just stagger over everybody else. So it's just, and I think you mentioned it in the pre-show notes that whenever she arrives here on campus, she will be the tallest Division I women's college basketball player. And so you put that kind of presence on the court under the net, that makes it very hard to stop. And at the very least, even if she's, getting attacked by these smaller players, that opens up the lanes for foul shots and just, makes it hard for anybody to defend, even teams that have those taller players to compete with that. They don't, like I said, tallest player in D1, so nobody's going to have the kind of size to compete with that.
Absolutely. And she comes from a 5-out system. For those that aren't basketball minds, it's basically like a spread offense in basketball terms. They move quickly when she plays for Spain. So she's not even really playing in a system that fits her well, but that does breed excellence for her because she knows how to move quickly, which when you, again, watching tape, she gets up and down the floor. She's not a typical, like I'll make fun of Charles Bassey because he's a Western Kentucky guy, but he was the tallest guy in D1 when he was at Western Kentucky, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago. But the kid could only play 2 minutes at a time because he couldn't get up and down the floor. So I'm impressed with her, and I spent a lot of time on her for a lot of good reasons, but I don't want to shy away from the other signee who's also a 6'4" center, Jenna McClendon. She's from Prattville Christian Academy in Deatsville, Alabama, just south of us here. Someone that, in my opinion, slipped under the radar. When I watch film on her, very high energy ball player. With her, I put her as a player comp to Courtney Whitson. Because something about Whitson that a lot of people don't understand is her game doesn't necessarily translate to a stat sheet. Courtney will get her rebounds and Courtney will get her 3-pointers up, and she'll make a good percentage of them. Jenna doesn't have the 3-point look that Courtney Whitson has, but she has that energy about her. She is going to get on the floor and make plays. She's always going to be a presence. She's very physical. That's one thing I like to see out of a 6'4" girl. I don't know how she slipped under the radar, But I think when we see what Jenna becomes in a few years off of this ACL surgery and see how her senior season goes this year, I think she's going to be a steal for this class. And this class in general, I think we have a lot of great signings, but she could potentially be a steal.
And you talk about, you compare her there to Courtney, who is now in a assistant coaching role for the Blue Raiders. And I think that's just so important that whenever Jenna gets here, she can learn from someone who's similar to her archetype, right? Who's been there, who's had that same kind of high energy that she has. And so I think that's so important for her to be able to kind of feed off her and just learn from her wealth of experience here as a Blue Raider. And high energy, it fits with the program. I mean, this is a high energy program, a very proud program that the Enzels have built here in Middle Tennessee. So excited to see what she can bring. You said coming off an ACL injury, so hoping obviously everything healing wise gets good with that, and excited to see what she can bring to the table when she gets here in Murfreesboro.
Yeah, pure speculation on my part. I haven't reached out to Jen or anything, but it looks like she's going to be playing her senior season. So that's always good to kind of get your feet underneath you as well as you get back into college, because you want to show up in shape, and that's always something that can hinder you when you have ACL is you kind of tend to fall out of shape for 9-10 months, whatever that rehab is. So highlighting that class, 2025 class. So all these girls will not be here until next season. But you got Carson Swaney, the first commit, 5'11" point guard from Maryville, Tennessee. She goes to Heritage High School. Macy Pfeiffer, the 5'11", the small forward, Ingomar in Mississippi. Now that's one of the big signings that made some noise. Mississippi Gatorade Player of the Year, as well as a Miss Basketball winner. And then you got Blair Bogus, who's from Wayne County, small school here. Another one that probably gets overlooked because of the school that she goes to, but she's a Miss Basketball winner and actually beat out current Lady Raider Savannah Davis for that Miss Basketball award 2 years ago. So a near 20-point per game score. I would anticipate she's going to do that again this year. But she's 6 foot, adds a lot there to you. And then Kirsten Verhulst was another recent signee. She's the 5'8" point guard from Kansas. Another player that when I spoke with Matt Insel, he said that she's the real deal. She's kind of the first true point guard we're bringing in outside of Jada Harrison, who's already on roster, and Courtney Blakely for that matter. Blakely will be gone after she graduates this season. So you got a lot of these ball players here that all come from winning programs. There's not really one on this list that, plays for a stinker, if you will. That's something that the archetype that Insel loves is he wants players that know how to win ball games. He knows what it takes to be a part of a winning program. So that's always important. When you look at the roster turnover for next year, I'm myself might be a little scared because you're losing Jalen Gregory. You're going to lose Boulder-Rava. You're going to lose your new signers with Alina Arike and then Courtney Blakely, as I just said, and then Jada Granum, who we'll see what kind of contribution she makes this year, but she's a center. So you're losing some size. You're losing a lot of production at the top there. People don't know Alina Arike yet, but they will when the season's over. She's going to be just as much of a contributor to this team as Courtney Whitson was and as Boulder-Rava is. So I think this I'm sad to see these people go, but in context of this signing class that's coming in, I feel pretty good about where this team could be. Maybe not necessarily in 2025. You still have some talent, and I'm sure they're going to add some with the portal to maintain that competitive level that they're at. But you got to be excited for what this team and what this future is with this signing group.
Absolutely. I mean, after the success they had last year, I think that's going to carry over regardless of any signing class is going to carry over into this year. They're bringing a lot of that talent back. And so I think this year is a given to be successful. And then you talk about 2025. It's just interesting to me with the Enzels and recruiting. They will have somebody from Sparta, Tennessee, just right down the road from Murfreesboro. And then they'll also go take a trip overseas and get somebody from Spain. So they're just bringing around all of this, diverse group of basketball talent to really just fit them into the winning culture that they built here in Middle Tennessee. And I think another key thing for that talent, whenever they get here, is if 2024 is anything like 2023 for MTSU, then there are going to be plenty of opportunities for those younger players to get into games, whether that be, late in games with foul outs, or more specifically, what I was thinking is in some of the conference play, MTSU, they handed out some pretty big blowouts, and that if that happens again, that opens the door for some of that younger talent to kind of get some experience, and that experience is crucial, especially in those road environments that they may face. And I think that's just critical for them to get that now, so that whenever the bulk of the roster is overturned and the keys are handed to them in 2025, I think experience now will greatly benefit the Blue Raiders in 2025.
Yeah, right. I think the experience that's going to be gained this year, just because of how dominant this team is going to be, because there's not going to be a fall off. I'll go ahead and make that prediction now. This team is going to play some excellent talent, but even looking at some of these teams that they're going to play, they're going to be the better team on the floor. The only games you might be able to make an argument for is Iowa State and Kansas State. But you're got the benefit of being on a neutral floor. Kansas State isn't really necessarily a neutral floor, but I still give them benefit of the doubt. That's something that Instil's always done, as these girls are ready. And I'm excited to see what this group does this season, as well as this group that we just spoke about for the 2025 signing class. So we'll wrap that talk up there. I don't want to spoil too much women basketball talk, because if you're excited about Lady Raiders basketball, look ahead. In 2 weeks, I'll actually have our basketball preseason preview with the one and only Rick Instil. So a lot of exciting news to be had there, as well as discussing this current roster. But Brett, I appreciate you taking the time out of today to talk a little football, a little basketball with us. But before we sign off, you're at MTSU Sidelines. You're the sports editor this year. Let the people know, where they can find you, because you're in a lot of different mediums as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a print medium first, but we're online only. So you can find us at mtsusidelines.com. We're posting consistently, and we're not just football. We're basketball. We're anything tennis. I had a tennis article go up last week. So just that well-balanced diet of anything MTSU sports related, you can find us there. Also, if sports isn't your cup of tea, Sidelines has lifestyles and news. So you can find anything campus related on there. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram, on TikTok as well, I believe. So follow us there. And then I'm also involved with Middle Tennessee News for a MTSU football pregame show I alluded to earlier, Blue Raider Extra Point. And you can find that on Facebook and on YouTube on Saturdays for home games for MTSU. So I think our next broadcast will be the Liberty home contest later on down the road. So make sure you check that out as well.
Absolutely. And your handle on Twitter is at bwalker2004?
That's correct.
I assume 2004 is your birth year?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually had a birthday just this past weekend.
If that makes any Blue Raider fans out there feel old, you're listening to someone born in this this century, talking Blue Raider athletics. But Brett, it's great talking to you, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, Jake. Thank you so much for having me.
The BRP is proudly partnered with Rivals Network affiliate GoMiddle.com. Subscribe for premium content for all the inside scoop on MTSU athletics, recruiting, or join our free forums to discuss today's episode and all things Blue Raiders. The BRP is also partnered with the College Huddle, a nationwide collaborative effort with over 80 Division I programs represented. Check out the website at thecollegehuddle.com to catch up on all college football content with daily articles and episodes provided by the largest college podcast community on the internet. Joining us now on the Blue Raider podcast as a part of our player interviews that we do every week, we are revisiting the cross-country track and field side of things, and joining us today are two distance runners, and first on tap for us is Jacinto Gaspar. He is a junior college transfer from Iowa Western, coming all the way from Portugal. Welcome to the show, Jacinto.
Hello, guys. Yes, my name is Jacinto Gaspar from Portugal, and I'm a cross-country runner and a distance runner too, so yeah.
Absolutely. And Jacinto, before we came on, I was asking you a few questions there, a little bit about your journey here. I want let the fans know, because with this team in particular, the program that is a track and field, there's a lot of international players, and they all have these unique, different stories. So for you, you're a little bit different from the ones that we've spoken to in the past. You went to junior college before you got here. So tell us a little bit about the story of how you got to Iowa Western, and then how you got from Iowa Western here to Murfreesboro.
Okay. So basically, I had one of my goals after I finished high school in Portugal. I always want to come to America and be part of your guys' program in America, basically. Iowa Western reached out to me, and because I was first of all I was not eligible on NCAA because of some like school stuff, and Iowa Western helped me on that process to after come to a school in NCAA after I choose MTSU. Of course, I'm here now. And yeah, I passed 2 years on Iowa Western, taking general studies, improving my times too. I had a great time there too. Great coaches, great teammates, great environment too. And yeah, after I came here and really happy now.
In Iowa Western, for those that don't really know much about junior college track and field
Yes.
cross country, that's a prestigious program when it comes to junior college.
Yes, definitely. Yes, Iowa Western is one of the biggest, I can say, yes, definitely one of the biggest junior college on the country. Really good in every sport. Like we are really good in football, like winning. I don't wanna lie, but I think 3 years in a row. Track and field, we always on like fighting for top three. Current, like the team now is ranking in first on cross country, so that's awesome. Yes, he's a definitely a really prestige and really successful junior college team for sure.
And part of that, I bring that up is because of you and your participations. I know that you qualified for the national championships in cross country, indoor, outdoor track and field, and all six opportunities, I should say, that you were there at Iowa Western. Tell me what it was like competing at such a high level at the junior college level.
Oh, it's awesome. Yes, like sometimes I feel like people think like junior college don't have like a really good level, but that completely changed my mind. And like junior college nowadays, I feel like it's so competitive and they have such a young talent too. Like going to cross country nationals, indoor and outdoor. Like I was able to be All American like just 3 times. Like I was on cross country, indoor on the mile, and on the half marathon too. And yes, I think that's it. Because like the level now on junior college is really good. Like we have some good distance and not just even distance, but like track and field in general, really good.
And I know when you're there at the junior college levels, because racing is so much different than like what most fans would see at football or basketball. Like you're competing against those Division I schools at some of your meets. You're all running the same race. Now maybe your times count differently. You're not necessarily going 1v1 against those type of schools. But now that you've transitioned here to MTSU and you're kind of you're finding your way at the Division I level. What are some things that you're kind of learning a little bit about your preparation that maybe has changed from your time at Iowa Western?
To be honest with you, I think it didn't change much because like in Iowa Western, we was a really competitive school. Like as year two, like we all always know our like rivals and we always paying attention on them. Like because when we get on the big stages like conference, regionals and stuff, we kind of know where we are, our rivals, and we know like what schools we need to beat and stuff. But yeah, it's a little bit different, but I think the mind I think is a little bit different, like school wise more and competitive wise, like goals is like the same.
Absolutely. Well, you had your first race this last weekend. You're at the Southern Showcase. I know you ran a time a little bit off of your typical pace, but tell me a little bit about your first race. What are some things you gathered there?
Oh yes, I ran there on nationals too from junior college last year. I did 24:19. This time I did 25. um yeah, we can say was a little bit off of my PR, but was in two different times of the season. One was on like where we supposed to be on our peak of shape was last year when I did 2024 was 2 months ago, was in November, and now we are still a little bit early on the season. Like don't get me wrong, I would like to do a little bit better, but I think was a good start and it's like a good beginning for the rest of the what we have for the rest of the season for sure.
Yeah, I like how you put that because again, when you talk about distance racing and you do a season of it, there's a way to go about it. You don't want to peak too
Yes.
early. You kind of want to prepare yourself for the end of the year. So as you're preparing or you're moving towards your next race and you're getting closer to that conference championship in November, what does the season look like for you?
So like now, like as I said, we basically a little bit still building, like we don't want to peak too early because we want to get on conference and regionals. That's the basically the two most important races on fall on this semester, and we want to be on the peak of our shape, so we don't want to peak too early. So now we're still building, we're still doing a lot of mileage. Like this week we did 3 workouts, and we're going to compete in Missouri next week. Like we are with a big volume now. For like after when we get kind on that timeline of regionals and conference, we start tapering for getting fresh. Our energy is like 100% and ready to fly.
Absolutely. And you tease a little bit about going into like indoor outdoor season. I know you run it all. You do a little bit of the shorter long distance, like you mentioned on the indoor. You'll do the mile, and
Yeah.
I know when you've done the half marathons. I want to know from you, as someone that's done all the racing, what is there a particular event that you prefer over the others?
Yes, definitely. Yes. First of all, I love road races. I love like half marathon stuff. I never did a marathon, but after college, for sure, that will be on my calendar. And but the second, I love cross country. Cross country is so fun. I think the way cross country it is, and like the team wise and stuff. I love cross country. And after come track. Track is really important for time wise too. It's my last favorite, but we still need to do, and I know it's super important. But yes.
Do you ever wish that, like, because you're obviously really talented at the distance running? What about like the 100 meter, 200 meter? Is that ever like something you've ever thought like, man, I wish I was really good at something like that?
Yes, I thought that a lot of times, let me tell you, because 200 meters is my favorite race. Like I feel like the feeling is if you have like going on the curve and get outside of the curve with that much speed is such a good feeling. I would love to be a sprinter too. But I born a little bit short with more resistance than speed, so we work with what we have. So yeah.
Tell me about field events. Has there ever been a field event you like say the long jump, high jump? Have you ever even laid eyes on something like that?
To be honest with you, I like to watch, but I will not probably see myself doing. Probably the high jump, I find like really interesting the thing they do, but probably not. I like to run. That's my stuff for sure.
Uh, and I know another thing about you that I did do a little research is you're not just a runner, you're also a surfer.
Yeah.
I see that all over your Instagram. You love the surf.
Yes, yes. In Portugal is like a little bit of our, I can say a little bit of our culture. I live like 15 minutes to the beach, so like every time I have a chance to go surf with friends, I love to do it. Yes, surf
Do
and
you
skate is my second passion.
do you have? I mean, I know you live in closer to the Gulf. You're a little bit closer to the Atlantic Ocean. Is there a surf that you prefer? Have you had the opportunity to do it since you've been in America?
Not yet. I already like last semester, on the end of the semester, I had the opportunity, like when we finished school, to go to Costa Rica for 2 weeks, and I love it there too. It was really good. I didn't have a chance to surf in America yet. I want to go to California one day, but I didn't have the chance yet. But one day,
Absolutely. Well, I've been told, yeah, you've got to go to the Pacific side. I'm told the
yeah,
Gulf definitely not, but the Atlantic not so much either. So, but yeah, Jacinto, it's been a pleasure having you on. We wish you the best of luck the rest of the way, as well as your qualifying for hopefully regionals and nationals coming up.
for sure. Thank you.
All right, joining us now is our second distance runner from the cross country team. She is a sophomore distance runner in specific, coming from Vandalia, Ohio. Is that right, Eleanor?
Of Vandalia, Ohio.
We just practiced it, and I thought I'd get it, but I didn't. But joining us now is sophomore distance runner Eleanor Towe. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. And one thing about Eleanor that I've noticed as I've done a little bit of research for this interview in specific is I've yet to find a picture of you ever not smiling. And I think it's a testament to you because you're talking about distance running. yeah, there's the last post that they had about you, you're smiling while running. And myself could never imagine myself doing something like that. So I have to compliment you on your cheerful attitude for a sport that is cross country, because I can imagine it's very demanding.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I love to run. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't. So, yeah, it's one of my passions.
Absolutely. Well, Eleanor, talking about your freshman cross country season, you finished 11th as an individual at the cross country championships. What are kind of some expectations you've set for yourself in your sophomore year?
Yeah, for my sophomore year, I'm always trying to improve. So, I definitely want to win conference again with the team and contribute and, get the best placing that I can. Yeah, definitely want to work with the team again this year.
And your run this last weekend at the Southern Showcase, I've got it down as 4 seconds off your 5K PR. I mean, that's got to be an excellent start for you. How did you kind of grade yourself out and how things went out there in Huntsville?
Yeah, I tried to run it the same as I did last year, and I'm happy with my time. I feel like I'm right there, right where I was, and so I hope to keep improving and keep working on myself. Get good sleep. That's something I struggle with sometimes, but yeah, I definitely am trying to lock in this season.
Yeah, the sleep is an aspect that I think most people don't really think about, because it's vital to the recovery of running and really any kind of sports in general. I want to hear from you though. Is you're in a unique situation. You're a freshman, or you were a freshman, moving into your sophomore year. You got a year under your belt, because being a student athlete in college is totally different than it is in high school. What are kind of some of those tidbits, to expand upon maybe the sleeping thing? But what are some of the things you've learned from your freshman year that you could take into the sophomore campaign to again improve your game as a runner?
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that rest and recovery is huge, like making sure I'm going to like the physical therapy and seeing my trainer. Also, nutrition is definitely always important. But yeah, mostly getting good sleep is the main thing.
Absolutely. And tell me, this last spring, you've got your you got a win under your belt at the 1500 meters there at the Brian Clay Invitationals, which is huge for you. I just asked Jacinto the same question. I want to know, do you prefer the shorter distance stuff, the shorter, longer distance stuff, than what you're running like the 4 and the 5K right now?
I would say yes. Yeah, my favorite race is the 1500. So that's like right at the mid distance, so that's my favorite.
And as far as training for something like that, because that is a spring outdoor track event, the 1500 meter that we touched on, just for those that aren't good with the metric system, that's just shy of a mile. But when you're training for something like that, how does performing throughout the cross country season prepare you for that outdoor season?
Yeah, getting good mileage in, like getting a good base, is definitely important for even the shorter distance because that'll help you with your endurance. And yeah, it's definitely good to have a lot of mileage coming into track season. Yeah.
Right. And we'll get a little bit more personal about you and what you do. I know that you're in school right now. You're a music major. I'm sure you can tell me a little bit specifically like what that major is outside of just the broad term of music. But I know that you released your first single this last spring. I think it was in May. Baby Don't Lie. Tell me a little bit about that hobby, that side hobby that you do.
Yeah, music is my other passion. I love to create and to come up with melodies, and I write a lot. And one of my favorite things to do also is collaborate with other people. I just love, inspiring each other and seeing, two creative minds come together. And so, yeah, I released my first single in May, and yeah, it was really fun, and it's just something I enjoy doing, singing as well. So yeah, so I plan to continue doing that, and I'm actually working on an album right now, looking for a producer. So yeah, I have a full album written, and I'm looking forward to maybe releasing that sometime next year.
Well, there you go. There's your plug. Need a little producing help for anyone out there listening or knows where to point Eleanor in the right direction. But you did the whole 9 yards with the song released. It wasn't just something that you kind of threw out there. You did a video shoot. You did all that work for it. So I mean, as far as the work goes into it, is that one of the things like you're feeling yourself through? There's a lot more to it than what most people think of just singing into a microphone.
Yeah, that's definitely something I realized myself because, I don't didn't think a lot about marketing in the beginning, but learning a little bit more about music business, like that's a huge part of it. And yeah, it's cool to go through the motions and like experience, and learn new things while you're kind of doing it. And I feel like now I kind of have an idea of what to do in the future too. So yeah, I was kind of winging it on my own when I first released it. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to continue and maybe even meet other people to work together with in the future.
Absolutely. And to draw a parallel in my world, I did the same thing. I started this podcast back in December and I thought it would be super easy, but the more I want to keep, increasing the production value or make a better product, as you're kind of pointing to the marketing side of things, how do you portray that to people? It's always something you're constantly trying to feel your way through, and then also trying to find the people that kind of like your stuff. Again, you're trying to market to those people and put out a good thing. But that's interesting to hear. And again, you're a student athlete. That student side of it, you're a music student, would I be accurate to say that you're trying to get into the songwriting, that aspect after college?
Definitely. Yes. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, last question I had here, just kind of a dumb question on my part, just something that I think about. I don't run, but if I did, I walk. I walk on a treadmill for what that's worth. I always have headphones in, and I think it's something that is so intriguing about runners, especially in NCAA, or I think across all brands of track and field and cross country, you can't wear headphones, and you're running for 25, 30 minutes. What in the world do you think about for that amount of time?
Wow, that's a good question. I honestly try not to think of anything because sometimes you're just trying to finish. But yeah, sometimes I don't think of anything, or I try not to, or I'm thinking of how much it hurts and trying to get through it.
Yeah, that's what I thought in my head. I was like, if I was running for that amount of time, I'd have to fill my thoughts with something, but I don't even know what I would think about. I guess maybe you're thinking about your splits. Like I said, I've got no idea, but I don't know. It's more of a mental game, I think, running. I'm sure you could attest to that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You try to fill your mind with something or try not to think of anything at all. That's me.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, silly question on my part, but these are questions that a lot of us don't experience that we'd like to know. But Eleanor, we appreciate you coming on and joining us today. Again, that sophomore distance runner, Eleanor Towe. We look forward to the rest of your season as well as your outdoor season when you run that 1,500 meter you love so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
The BRP is proudly partnered with Rivals Network affiliate GoMiddle.com. Subscribe for premium content for all the inside scoop on MTSU athletics, recruiting, or join our free forums to discuss today's episode and all things Blue Raiders. The BRP is also partnered with the College Huddle, a nationwide collaborative effort with over 80 Division I programs represented. Check out the website at thecollegehuddle.com to catch up on all college football content with daily articles and episodes provided by the largest college podcast community on the internet.
As always, it is time to go behind enemy lines. This week, the Raiders will go to Memphis. Short little trip, 3 hours down to Memphis, Tennessee, and they'll be facing the Memphis Tigers. But as always, we'll bring on a guest to kind of talk about our upcoming opponent. And joining us this week is from the Daily Memphian. He is the Memphis Tigers beat reporter going into his 4th season covering the Tigers. Joining us on the BRP is Frank Bonner II. Frank, how's it going?
Doing all right. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, and thanks for joining us. One of the hot topics right now, noteworthy anyways, is that it was announced on Monday, yesterday, that the Tigers would be staying in the AAC. Is that kind of something that has taken you by surprise? What's kind of the feeling there in Memphis about that news?
No, not really. I know it's taken some people by surprise over here in this market. I just think that at this particular time, there are too many question marks surrounding that, right? Like, the money value that was being thrown out there, is that legit, right? In terms of how much money each school was going to get. The travel, like the geographical footprint from Memphis, doesn't really match up. Will there be enough money to offset the travel cost that's going to be for your Olympic sports and all this and that? So, it sounded nice in theory, but I just think all the logistics that have to go into that, Memphis decided to bow out and to stay where they were.
Would it be inaccurate to say that they may be holding out for something like the ACC or Big 12, some sort of merger there in the future?
I mean, yeah, that's what the thing about that though is that can't be the only reason why you said no, because you don't know if that's ever going to come. And so there had, in my opinion, right, there has to be more reasons other than that as to why you said no, because, you know, Memphis has been waiting for a Big 12 invitation for some time now. That may never come. If you look at the ACC, it looks like they may be on the verge of patching things up with Florida State and Clemson. So some of the dominoes in the ACC may not fall the way that you felt they were going to fall. So right there, you know, that can't be the only reason why you said no. And if that is the only reason why you said no, that would be a mistake. But I don't think that is the only reason why Memphis decided not to join.
Well, good stuff. I think that was obviously, like I said, noteworthy, something that's worth talking about. Everyone had a lot of eyes on Memphis, especially with how well the team has done, the program, the path they've been on in the last decade. And to move into the matchup this weekend, Ryan Silverfield, he's going into his 5th full season there as the head coach of the Tigers. He's well on his way, what it looks like to be a 2nd straight year of double-digit wins. Tell me about the expectations for this team this year. I think maybe prior to this last weekend, a lot of people thought Memphis could maybe vie with Boise State there as a potential G5 auto bid winner. So what's kind of the expectations moving for the rest of the year for the Tigers?
Yeah, the expectations heading into the year, even now, are what they were, you know, are the preseason AAC champion, right? I think that is their goal, to win the league and then potentially compete for a spot in the college football playoff, right? So, yeah, they lost to Navy, which hurts their college football playoff chances. But that door isn't completely shut. And then if you look at the conference, they still have road games at Tulane, at UTSA, at South Florida, and all those teams are supposed to be, you know, in the upper echelon and competing for the conference. And so Memphis still, even with the Navy loss, Memphis still has a chance to win the league. As far as the college football playoff is concerned, you have to see how other things shake up, right? What happens with Boise? Boise and UNLV still play each other, right? So one of those teams are guaranteed to have a loss. Boise already has a loss against Oregon, and you've got Liberty, who's still undefeated. JMU is in the mix. And so we'll see what happens with how that Navy loss impacts the college football playoff situation. But as far as the conference championship, yeah, that's still on the table for Memphis, and that doesn't go away after just one loss.
Does that Navy loss spell vengeance for the Raiders? I mean, you can't feel good knowing Memphis lost that game, and you just have to anticipate that Silverfield is going to, you know, he's not going to call the dogs off this Saturday.
Yeah, right. After a loss like that, you do expect Memphis to kind of be refocused, or whatever word you want to use, and protecting home field with Middle Tennessee coming to Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. So, yeah, especially for that defense, right? Because that defense had been playing really well for the first 3 games, and then they kind of collapsed against Navy. And so they're probably going to go into this game against Middle Tennessee looking to be dominant again, looking to you know, force takeaways and so on. And so, yeah, I do think Middle Tennessee is going to get a version of Memphis that's looking to kind of get their get back after a letdown in Annapolis.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and start talking about the defense there. You got 7 returners on defense. They allowed 28 points per game in 2023. They were expected to be a lot more competitive this year, like we saw up to that Navy game. What needs to happen for this group to continue to be great? Because I think the Navy game is going to be an outlier because you don't face the triple option that often.
Yeah, right. I think what happened in that game a little bit is, obviously you go into this Navy game focused on the triple option and in the run or whatever, but Navy put in some pass wrinkles. I mean, they even threw a double pass to the quarterback, right? And so I do think that kind of threw Memphis off a little bit in their game plan. Just Navy's ability to have success through the air. I mean, they didn't throw it 30 times or anything, but when they did throw it, they threw it well. But yeah, you're going toward more of a conventional offense and that defense. And Silverfield talked about it in his presser today about how much pride that defense has, right? And so they've got good guys with pride on that side of the ball. Also, I think Jordan Hankins, the new defensive coordinator, is going to get those guys ready to play. They're some of the guys are a little banged up. Elijah Herring, who dressed and warmed up against Navy but didn't play. And so we'll see if he's back. And if he is, that would be a big boost for the defense.
I'm sure you feel confident in Memphis's ability to outscore just about any team. Even if the defense is playing half as well as they need to, the offense is one of the best in the AAC as well as in the G5 in general. A lot of that has to do with the quarterback, Seth Hennigan, 3,000-plus yard passer last year. He's going to be up for the bidding as far as the AAC Offensive Player of the Year. What about Seth's game makes him so dominant and makes him so tough to stop?
Yeah, I think for one, Seth, he's very poised, right? If you look at how that Navy game went down, he was able to help put together a comeback, and it ended in an interception, right? And so that obviously he would prefer to have that pass back. But Seth, in the good and in the bad, he's going to be pretty even keeled, right? He's never going to let his emotions get the best of him one way or the other. And what that does is that allows him to stay focused on seeing the field, and having the game slow down for him a little bit. And so when you've got a 4-year quarterback in the same system, him and Cramsey have been together for 3 years now. There's a lot of trust and there's a lot of familiarity there. And so I just think that combination has allowed Seth to do some pretty big things here at Memphis.
What are some of those names that Blue Raider fans should be looking out for, or some of his targets that he'd be hitting on Saturday?
Well, obviously, the Rock Taylor, the receiver who had a breakout year last year. He's a guy that had a good game against Navy, right? He had 100 yards. Kobe Drake had 102 yards against Navy, right? And Kobe Drake is another guy who's been in the program for some time. He was in the program as a walk-on in 2019 when Norvell was there. So, he's a guy who's really familiar and has really come on as a legitimate threat, especially in third down situations. You got Demir Blankenship, who can take the top off of defenses with the speed that he has. And then Memphis is an offense that uses its tight ends in the passing game in a way that you don't necessarily see from a lot of college football teams today. So, tight end Anthony Lanphier, tight end Brennan Doyle, where it seems like every time Brennan touched the ball, he's catching it in the end zone, right? So those are some of his weapons. And then they use their running backs out of the backfield, right? So, you'll expect to see Mario Anderson catch a pass or two or so on. And then they've had some issues in the run game, or not issues. They've had some injuries in the running back room. Sutton Smith, in the game one, who started the season opener, he went down for the season. Greg DeWosier is out for at least a couple of weeks, is what Ryan Silverfield said. And so now you've got Mario Anderson, who's the starter. You got Brandon Thomas, who in 2021, he had a really strong year, right? And then in his career, he's battled some injuries and he's been used as kind of like a short yardage back. But then against Navy, they needed him and he ran for over 100 yards. So we'll see if Brandon Thomas can keep that up. And so those are some of the weapons that the Memphis offense has at its disposal.
I know something that has been a challenge for them, and really what makes Seth Hennigan's game so impressive is that the run game hasn't necessarily been up to par to allow Silverfield to run a more balanced offensive approach. But looking at the numbers anyway, Mario Anderson Jr., the guy that you just spoke about at the running back room, has kind of taken over that starting position. He's the South Carolina transfer. He has had the numbers that would be, I would say that would open up the offensive playbook and obviously open up the playbook for Hennigan to find more of those targets. So tell me a little bit about his game, his first year there in Memphis, and how that's going to be able to try to transform that Tiger offense.
Yeah, Mario Anderson, they're going to need him. They're going to need him big, especially, I talked about the injuries in their running back room, right? And so that running back room was deep at one point. Now it's a little thin, because of injuries, right? And Mario Anderson is a guy who he ran against defenses in the SEC when he was at South Carolina, right? And so he's coming here and finding his way. And if you look at what he did last week, you can see him, getting more comfortable with the Memphis offense as he goes on. And so, I expect him and Brandon Thomas to be the two running backs that you'll see this week against Middle Tennessee. But yeah, Memphis is going to need Mario Anderson to continue having games like he had last week. because the depth is no longer there the way that it was.
Well, as we kind of close up our topic here of the preview for this upcoming Saturday, I think a lot of people already anticipate Memphis to win. Especially being a road game for MTSU. What is it that Memphis is going to do on Saturday that's just going to make it too tough for the Blue Raiders to overcome?
For one, I think offensively, they're going to try to be explosive, right? Especially if Rock Taylor and Kobe Drake, if they're healthy enough to be the players that they were last week. Demir, they're probably going to try to use his speed, get the run game going. So there's Memphis can overwhelm the Memphis offense can overwhelm you with talent. And so I think that's probably what they're going to try to do. And then defensively, like I said, they're going to try to get back to the roots of what they were in the first 3 games. And so I do think that defensively they're going to be ball hawkers, right? They're going to be play a little bit more fire after what happened against Navy. And anybody who I talk to about the Memphis defense, I'm really high on this linebacker group. We'll see if Elijah Herring plays or not. But even if he doesn't, I mean, they've still got Chandler Martin, Hudson, Bryce Edmondson. And so they've got a pretty strong linebacker group that I think can carry this the defense can carry this defense back to being where they were the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, the Elijah Herring that you've mentioned, local product for Murfreesboro anyways, from Riverdale High School, went to UT Knoxville. I know that there's a lot of eyes, at least locally here, that are looking to see his return and make some contributions there. But fall back there on that, what would have to happen for MTSU to have an opportunity to win on Saturday as well? What would the Tigers have to falter on?
I think obviously they would have to create extra possessions, I think, right? You got to force a fumble, get enough pressure to make Seth make a bad decision and get a turnover, right? Like I think if Middle Tennessee wants to have a chance to win the game, they're gonna have to force turnovers to get extra possessions. That's kind of to keep that Memphis offense off of the field. Before into the Navy game, it's been really tough to run the ball on the Memphis defense outside of the Navy game, and so if Middle Tennessee can establish some type of run to keep the defense from kind of stifling what they're trying to do, I think that'll help them.
Absolutely. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, that is Frank Bonner II from the Daily Memphian, Memphis Tigers beat writer for the football team. Been there for 3, going on 4 seasons now. Frank, I appreciate you taking the time and joining us to tell us a little bit about the Tigers.
All right. You take care.
Did you know the Blue Raider podcast has an online store? You can now support your favorite podcast by checking out our selection at our website, blueraiderpodcast.com. And stay tuned for new merchandise releases as we collaborate with athletes in NIL partnerships.
Thanks for sticking around to the Raider wrap-up portion of our episode, where we will review this last week in Blue Raider athletics, as well as look ahead to the upcoming schedule for all of our athletics in the fall season. And we will kick things off, as always, with our football team. They dropped their 45-17 match with Duke at home this last weekend, but I'd like to highlight Jaden Flip-Krettel for his 12 carries, 125-yard touchdown performance this Saturday. Look forward to seeing him continue, as that running back room has run a little bit thin, but it's obviously for his to stand out in. The Raiders will travel to Memphis this Saturday. Kickoff is slated for 6:30 p.m. Lady Raiders soccer got their Conference USA season underway on Thursday night against the FIU Golden Panthers. They dropped that contest 2-4. Started out really strong, had a 1-0 halftime lead, but it came down to FIU storming back there in that late second half. I do want to give a shout out to Idun Kavale, who scored her 3rd goal of the season against the Golden Panthers, as well as Manon Labarji, who got her 6th team-leading 6th goal on Thursday night. So they will look to continue their scoring ways, at least, as they travel all the way to El Paso this Thursday at 7 p.m. And then they have a second road fixture there in Las Cruces, New Mexico, facing off against the Aggies of New Mexico State, a very Conference USA favorite New Mexico State Lady Aggies at that. And that fixture on Sunday will start at 2 p.m. Lady Raiders had 2 matches in Charlottesville, Virginia, facing off against a very talented Virginia Cavaliers team. They lost their first match 1-3 and had a really good second match. Had an opportunity to win that one up 2-1. But the Lady Cavs come back and win the 4th and 5th set to steal one away from the Lady Raiders. And I do want to shout out Lau Jansen for her weekend, as she got her 100th career service ace, as well as her career 1,000th dig against Virginia in that first match. So the Little Rock transfer has proven big for the Lady Raiders last year, as well as this year. She's a vital part of their success that they will have this year in Conference USA. And they've got one more non-conference game until they get to that point, and that is tonight at 6 p.m. at Alumni Memorial Gymnasium, where they face off against Alabama A&M. And then their Conference USA schedule begins this weekend on the 26th at Sam Houston State in Huntsville, Texas. And that first match is at 6:30 p.m. on the 26th. And then they will have their second round of matches the next day at 6:30 p.m. also. Lady Raiders golf was in Franklin, Tennessee this last weekend at the Mason Rudolph Championships, where the team finished 15th out of 17. I do want to shout out Ella Manley, the young gun, finishing tied for 38th at 1 stroke over par. Abby Lee was at 4 over. Lainey Campbell 9 strokes over. Kendall Maynard 11 over, and Nicole Johnson at 18 over. The women's golf program will take a week off, and then the following weekend they will be in Denver, Colorado, taking part in the Ron Moore Intercollegiate. Men's tennis has 4 competitors currently in Tulsa, Oklahoma, competing at the ITA All-American Championships. This is a drop-in as they are still going there. Rostislav Halfinger, the new South Alabama transfer, he won the Lone Raider to win their round of 128 in the pre-qualifying and advanced to the round of 64, where he unfortunately dropped that matchup. So for the week, he's so far as 1-1. I believe that is it, is a 2-match guarantee. Andre Horak and Kareem Al-Amin both lost their first pre-qualifying matches. However, they did win in the consolation bracket, and they are now currently sitting in the round of 32, awaiting for their scheduled time. So as of Monday evening, we don't know when they will be back on the court, but obviously stay tuned to Twitter as they will keep us up to date there, as well as next week's Raider wrap-up. I will have a good wrap-up on their ITA All-American Championships. The team itself, they will be in Nashville this weekend at the Belmont Invite. That will be the 27th through the 29th this weekend, facing a few other teams as well, but stay tuned for that in our next week's Raider wrap-up. Women's tennis, they had their fall season finally begin up in Miami of Ohio, or at the Invite there. Always take these scores with a grain of salt as they're mixing up some rosters, mixing up some pairings and doubles and stuff like that. So they faced the host Red Hawks on a doubles-only match, dropping that one 1-2. And then against Xavier, the lone singles win went to Alicia Truden, who got the singles win over Pendergast of Xavier. And then the Lady Raiders were swept by Louisville 0-6. But they will have a few weeks off until they make a return back home, as they will host the ITA Regionals from October 10th, which is a Thursday, all the way to a Monday thereafter. And actually, to preview next week's episode, we will have Lady Raiders women's head coach, Teo Bailey Duval. We will be on to discuss that ITA Regionals, as well as look ahead to the Lady Raiders' remaining fall schedule and a little preview of what they have to come in the spring. So exciting to hear from Coach Bailey Duval as we preview all of that's coming ahead. Lastly, cross country is back in action this Friday up at Gons Creek, Columbia, Missouri. Jacinto already touched on him running that race before. It is one that they've run in the past, so they still continue to peak as they get closer and closer to hopefully repeating at the conference championships in November. And that will do it for the Raider wrap-up portion of our episode. So I appreciate all of our guests on, Brett Walker, as well as Jacinto Gaspar, Eleanor Towe, and of course the Daily Memphians, Frank Bonner II, to preview the Memphis Tigers. If you're not already following us on our social medias at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Blue Raider Pod. If you're listening on your favorite streaming service, don't forget to go over to YouTube if you want to watch the visual presentation. But of course, subscribing and liking the video over there does a lot for the algorithm. Of course, it helps me out tremendously when you do that. So if you don't mind, go over there, give me a subscribe, give me a like, and all that good stuff. Next week, as I already previewed, we'll have Lady Raiders head women's coach Teo Bailey Duval, as well as we will have Sam Doughton return. It's a bye week for football next week, so we will wrap up what happens at Memphis, the non-conference slate, as well as wrap up all that's going on in fall sports, as some of them will enter into conference play, as we already touched on with volleyball, with soccer, and then we got a little bit of tennis stuff, and of course we'll talk football with Sam, as always, this time of year. So again, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you listening. Thanks to our sponsors, MD Roofing, as well as the Conseco Group. Always give them a call if you have any of your general contracting needs, as well as your home needs for residential roofing at MD Roofs. But again, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you, and I will see you guys again next week. And until then, go Blue.